Hi, everybody. It's Meghna here again. I am CEO, founder of Families Go Abroad Portugal program. It's a live group coaching program, and I also have one-on-one, and we talked about every aspect of the move, everything logistics, housing, schools, and financial income support. So it's this whole comprehensive support to getting everything you need lined up to making a move in 12 months or less. Today I want to talk about interesting topic of raising your kids in Portugal and maybe what are some of the differences you might expect of like in the education, the culture, and just life in Portugal versus living in the States. So I could probably talk about this in I could go in so much depth, but today I want to share a couple things. So, school culture, okay? What is like the average Portuguese private school and public school culture versus an American, a typical American public school? So one thing is really clear is the hours. The day is quite long and, but it has lots more breaks. And the aftercare, at least in a private school, is included, okay? A private Portuguese school. So typically kids start school around 9 a.m. And if they're in the 5th grade or above, they would start a little earlier, like 8:30. And they go until about 4 to 4:45. And that's like their class schedule, okay? They would typically have 1 hour for lunch and 1 hour in breaks, intervalos, they would call it. And after school, they have the option to stay at a private Portuguese school. They have the option to stay on and have built-in extracurriculars at their school almost every day up until about 6:30, and 7 o'clock is when the school closes. So I could leave my kids at school at a private Portuguese school from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. even regardless if they had extracurriculars. So every school is a little bit different, but in general, this is the typical schedule. So that's one key difference. The other, so many key differences. So 1 hour for lunch, you can have the option to have lunch at school, and that is usually like a 4-course meal in which they will obligatorily have soup. You must have soup as your first course. Once you finish the soup, you get salad and a main course. And the main course would typically be some rice, potatoes, or some kind of meat. They do have a meat-heavy culture here, and then there is the option at public schools to have a vegetarian option, not always available in a private school, or you would get fish, or you would get a vegetarian like pasta option once a week they might have. And then the dessert is usually like cup of fruit, or like gelatana, they say here. And then during the intervals, they could also have the option of snacks, milk, bread, yogurt, and a few other options. So all of those meals are prepared by a local restaurant nearby, is what I had for my kids growing up at their Portuguese school. And it is freshly made every day from scratch. Everything, the soup, the salads, and all the meat items and rice. So that's what you could typically get at a Portuguese private school. Culturally, there is a lot of affection in a lot of the schools. The smaller the school, the younger the kid. There's a lot of hugging and even kissing on the cheeks. A lot of touching and a lot of just affection for my kids, which I loved and my kids adored. It really made us feel welcomed and loved and embraced here. And as young children really need that affection, I think it was really nice for everyone's nervous system and just feeling the love. And that's something very common in Portuguese culture. There'll be kisses, 2 kisses among adults, and it's very common for teachers to do the same with their kids, their students. Culturally, also, there is sort of a separation here. Parents have their lives. Parents are entitled to that life. They are allowed to be parents, whether that means working or doing their own things, or, being able to consume, like, for example, a glass of wine or beer or cafe at the park with their children is quite common to do. And actually, well, it's available at cafes in front of parks, many places. And that's just part of the way life is here. It's very well integrated. They don't need separation, like this is only for kids zone and this is only for adults, and that kind of doesn't exist in Europe, and it's very well balanced that way. So it's very nice to have that as a parent. What else I was saying? Oh, okay. So because of the separation of schooling, of parents, the school also has a degree of autonomy, and they don't actually expect a lot of involvement from parents. Of course, this is dependent on the school. But I think they're open to it, but it's nothing like American public schools where you should be spending a lot of hours fundraising or participating in different activities. Maybe even showing up at school, volunteering an hour or two to help, in the classroom. None of that is the culture here. And in fact, they're quite hands-off, I would say, with parents. You don't get a lot of messages. You don't get updates. You don't get notified of public holidays that you're not aware of. You don't really, you don't really get notified willingly on a regular basis of like maybe what might be happening at school, for better or for worse, right? Either way, you're not getting a lot of communication, is my experience. Now, of course, when I wanted to find out more, I felt very comfortable walking into the school and speaking to the director. But, I don't know if that's all over the country. I just know that was the kind of local school that we had and that we loved. And it was very small and very, very communal and very family oriented. So that is available. I just think that they like to have their autonomy at school, and teachers as well. So you won't hear a lot, but I actually don't think that's a bad thing, because it was refreshing to not be getting all the updates all the time. Sometimes that could be demanding on you. And so that was, those are sort of some of the big cultural differences. I would say it has been more challenging in my Americanness, maybe linguistically to like engage maybe to meeting parents, but a lot of parents were very willing and open to inviting my children to their children's birthday parties, and that was always nice. So my kids have, I would say, definitely quickly integrated into Portuguese culture. They are fluent, and they've been for a couple years. That has helped with making friendships across Portuguese and American lines and English-speaking lines. But I think it still is something as a parent that I have to always be aware of and consciously make an effort to go to the events and to speak in Portuguese with them, because I don't want people to feel like they can't share with me, or I'm not as open to, I don't want them to feel like they have to switch to Portuguese as a result of me showing up. And so things that I've had to learn this way. So these are kind of some of the cultural things I've noticed. I've noticed at a greater scale in the city and living in Lisbon and in our community that kids are allowed to walk alone quite a bit. They have a degree of autonomy. They are encouraged to do that. They're encouraged to have, some street awareness, I would say, local, like simply. I've seen them on buses and metro, maybe about age 12. And that's quite common. I've seen kids do to walk everywhere from extracurricular at school and going out in the evening to get to activities by themselves, probably around my son's age. He's 12, so that's quite common. in our neighborhood. And that's been a beautiful thing to be able to give my son, and my daughters will be doing the same in a couple years, is to allow him to experience autonomy, independence, and street kind of awareness without necessarily getting all the extra street kind of streetwise. Like, he doesn't need to be exposed to those things right now at this age, but that's something that we can provide him in Lisbon, you know, because it is a safe city. It's small. It doesn't have some of the clear kind of issues and concerns around violence and drug use and around other issues, social issues and economic challenges, housing concerns that maybe a lot of American cities have as a culture, as a experience of being in cities. So that has been really nice to show and share with my son, and give him that. So those are some of the top, I would say, differences of raising kids are in the school system in Portugal, but also just in the greater culture. Just being a parent here has been so calming and easeful because I can do a lot of the things that I enjoy and the kids can enjoy at the same time. Being at the park is like, there's every neighborhood has a little park. Even if it's small, it's an outdoor place where there are always kids are playing. And so that's been really convenient to meeting other kids and families. It is a culture where people are out a lot, going to restaurants, bringing kids and bringing their babies. That's a very common scene and very encouraged. I don't feel out of place when my kids are at the restaurant making a scene, making lots of noise, being boisterous. That's pretty okay here, encouraged and common. And a lot of the people that work at the restaurants and the other customers find it very reassuring that kids are there and welcome them and they're not bothered by it, because literally everybody in society is like at the restaurant, right? You have elderly people also going out and enjoying life at the same time at concerts with kids. So I have really loved raising my kids here because it's been such a fun experience for me as a parent, because I can go and do so many of the activities I love doing, and I don't feel bad about bringing my kids along because they're part of us, and they're also welcomed at so many of these types of establishments. So thanks for listening in today. I think I covered a lot. I enjoy doing these little mini series now, and if you're interested in working with me, I can show you how to make this move possible for you and your family in the next 12 months. Connect with me, send me a message, and I will be happy to share a lot more about my services and my upcoming group in January, Families Go Abroad Portugal. Thank you.